Here's your wrestling news for September 3rd, 2022, and we're kicking off today with Ronda Rousey, who had one of her best moments in WWE to date, and while Adam Pearce was the one who stole the show, it takes two to tango. Pearce cut the best promo of his career, passionately telling Rousey that if it were up to him, she wouldn't even have a job with the company. Pearce and Rousey have a great chemistry and tension, and on screen, she allowed him to call her the biggest bitch, and Rousey responded by putting him in an armbar. Rather than being defined a heel, Rousey seems to be positioned more as a tweener on SmackDown, and this has allowed her to create magic with WWE's on-screen official. Fans at SmackDown got to see great stuff from Ronda Rousey, but there was a severe lack of Roman Reigns. The Blue Brand's final episode before Clash of the Castle 2022 was centered around Reigns' second anniversary as Universal Champion, with video packages throughout the night highlighting his run. These videos put Reigns' name up there with the likes of Bob Backlund, Pedro Morales, and Bruno Sammartino, but the Tribal Chief's actual presence on the show hardly seemed to be a minute long. It was cool to see Drew McIntyre hit the Claymore out of nowhere, but ahead of one of the biggest matches of his career, fans needed to see more of Reigns. Reigns was supposed to headline SmackDown, so it was disappointing that he didn't have much of a role on the show, and was a rare mistake in the booking of the head of the table. Since Triple H took over as head of WWE's talent relations, we've seen several superstars return to the promotion. That all started at SummerSlam with Dakota Kai's comeback, and the likes of Johnny Gargano, Karrion Kross, Hit Row, and others have followed. Fans have been excited to see who will be next to return, and it's been reported that Braun Strowman will be back next week. Speaking to BT Sport, Triple H didn't confirm the reports about Strowman, but when asked, did discuss the former Universal Champion, saying, "He's a polarizing person sometimes, but he's an amazing athlete." The game was also asked about Sasha Banks, who, while she hasn't left WWE, hasn't been seen since the walkout in May this year. Addressing a possible return to TV, the game said, "Time will tell. There was a communication breakdown. Communication breakdowns are terrible, and there is a communication breakdown there for whatever reason. Starting back up at that communication is not a difficult process, but it can be a process. But she's an unbelievably talented young woman that can do just about anything she wants. It just comes down to what does she want to do now with her life, her career, whatever that is. Like the passion clearly for what we do, there's a passion for other things as well. So it comes down to what does she want to do, because it's got to be right for her, got to be right for everybody. She is, I think as you've seen over the course of her career, just an unbelievable performer that I believe in with everything I have. She is one of the biggest stars in our business." Perhaps the biggest name fans want to see back in WWE is Bray Wyatt, who was shockingly released last year, but has teased a return to WWE. Praising The Fiend, Triple H called Wyatt one of the most, I mean this in the best way possible, crazy, creative people I've ever been around. Mine just never stops thinking of creative, but it's like being in a whirlwind of stuff. So without the harness and without someone to point the tornado, it's just all over the place. He's a victim of his own mind and creative, but I love working with him. Triple H is still new to the role of head of talent relations, but his choices so far have gone down well, and we'll have to see if the game can keep this momentum going. For over a year, WWE NXT and AEW Dynamite went head-to-head in the Wednesday Night Wars, with Tony Khan's promotion emerging the victor. The war only ended when NXT moved to Tuesday nights, and Khan and his roster have never shied away from mentioning their victory. Conversely, WWE rarely mentions going toe-to-toe with AEW, but that changed this week with an interview by Triple H. Speaking to Sports Illustrated, the King of Kings argued that the war with AEW has been blown way out of proportion, saying, "First of all, they beat our developmental system, good for them. There was never even the pressure of like, you have to beat that. It was never that. It's put on the best product we could." It shouldn't come as a surprise that WWE is seeking to downplay their repeated losses in the ratings to Dynamite, but he does have a point when noting how AEW's A show beat their developmental system and sometimes lost to NXT. While Dynamite beat NXT, AEW's premier show still falls far behind SmackDown or Raw in the ratings, so despite bragging about winning the war, don't expect Tony Khan to want to go head-to-head with WWE's main roster. Today, WWE will host their Clash of the Castle event in Cardiff, Wales, and despite a stacked card, some names won't be there. According to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Ronda Rousey wasn't scheduled to make the trip to the UK as of midweek, and therefore has been pulled from the event. This means that Rousey won't be interfering in Liv Morgan's SmackDown Women's title match with Shayna Baszler, as had been previously reported as a plan for the show. Rousey's focus right now seems to be on Adam Pearce, so while those two may have a match one day, don't expect the former SmackDown Women's Champion later today. If you've been watching SmackDown, you'll probably have figured out that Sami Zayn won't be in the Bloodline for long. Technically, he's never been in the group, but has been an associate, and last night's SmackDown saw things boil over for the former NXT champion. Jey Uso was furious at Zayn for how things went down on Raw, as Zayn didn't help him to beat Kevin Owens, while Jimmy tried to be the mediator between the two. For the past 400 days, Jimmy and Jey have dominated as tag team champions, but it looks like just a matter of time before they lose the gold to Owens and Zayn. SmackDown also saw Happy Corbin's second downward spiral of his career continue last night. After successive losses to Ricochet, Corbin vowed he wouldn't have another downfall like we saw last year and offered an open challenge, which Shinsuke Nakamura answered. The former King of the Ring defeated the man he took the crown from, continuing Corbin's string of losses. After the match, Corbin was seen being approached by a vehicle that looked exactly like the one that belongs to none other than John Bradshaw Layfield. As a voiceover encouraged Corbin to get in, it appears that JBL will be managing the Happy One going forward in a meeting of two of WWE's most detestable heels. Over to AEW now, as last month CM Punk went off script during an episode of Dynamite to bury Hangman Adam Page. Fully aware that Page wasn't booked for the show, Punk called out the Cowboy for a title match and branded him a coward when he didn't show up. Going off script rarely goes well for the talent, and while speaking to Forbes this week, Tony Khan warned against talent going into business for themselves. I was saying to them and a number of people who spoke at the meeting were making a point to all the wrestlers and TV talent that it does not serve us well if anybody goes into business for themselves. Khan may not want his roster going into business for themselves, but he's not punished Punk for doing that, instead granting him an undisputed AEW World Championship match at this weekend's All-Out pay-per-view. While AEW does allow their talent more creative freedom than WWE, there is a limit to that freedom, so we'll have to see if anyone after Punk decides to go into business for themselves. When WWE signed Gable Steveson last year, the Olympian had a ton of buzz around him. Steveson had teased joining AEW, UFC, and possibly the NFL before deciding on WWE, where he has been training hard to become a superstar, though that work isn't paying off. The Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that WWE has gone cold on Steveson, as the reviews of his training so far have been extremely poor. WWE had at one point planned to fast-track Steveson to the main roster after he finished his last amateur season in March, but the Observer adds that nobody has talked about a call-up to Raw in months. While Steveson has not been showing the improvements WWE has been hoping to see, it's noted that his brother Bobby Steveson, who has been working in NXT 2.0 as Damon Kemp, has been improving a great deal and is impressing people behind the scenes. Despite not having a single match, Gable Steveson was selected by Raw during last October's annual draft, but it may be a very long time before the Olympian has a match on the main roster. And we're ending today with some unfortunate news regarding Kyle O'Reilly now, who is currently out of action and isn't expected to return anytime soon. Taking to Instagram this week, O'Reilly shared an image from a hospital bed and later posted that he is going to require neck fusion surgery. It had been earlier this year during an episode of the This Is Van Color podcast that O'Reilly said that he'd been dealing with several lingering injuries. There's been no time window for when O'Reilly will be back in the ring, and we can't count out the fact that careers have been ended due to issues in the neck. Whatever the future holds, we are sending our best to Kyle, and we look forward to seeing the former NXT Tag Team Champion turned AEW star back in the ring down the line. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.